Let's see how far off from the Academy I am this year. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today, I'm going to be talking about my picks and predictions for this year's Oscars. There are 53 films nominated across 24 categories, and I was able to see 52 of those 53 films, which is actually the best I've ever been able to do. I do my Oscar predictions a little bit differently than most people, so I want to explain what I'm going to do here. Basically, for each category, I'm going to give you two picks. The first is my personal pick. It's the choice that I think was the best or most deserving and would be my vote if I actually had a vote. The second pick that I'm going to give you is the choice that I think will actually win. This will take into account not only the quality of the film, but also other contributing factors like the demographic makeup of the voting body. So basically, this is a should win, will win scenario. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. Remember, these are just my predictions, so be sure to post your own personal predictions for the 2020 Oscars in the comments below. I've already reviewed some of these movies on this channel, so if you want to check those out for some more in-depth thoughts on each of them, I'll put links in the description below, and I'll also link some of them up in the cards as we go along. Alright, let's get into these predictions. We'll go in the order that the categories were presented in last year. Actress in a supporting role. The nominees are Kathy Bates in Richard Jewell, Laura Dern in Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh in Little Women, and Margot Robbie in Bombshell. So we're actually starting with one of the categories I had the toughest time with this year. I think this was kind of a weak slate of nominees, so it makes it really hard to pick. Of all of these nominees, the only one that stood out when I watched the movie pre-nomination was Scarlett Johansson. She had a really small role, but it was a good and important one, so she's my personal pick. As far as who will actually win, I think it comes down to Laura Dern and Florence Pugh. But I'm gonna give the edge to Pugh, because her role was far more extensive than Dern's, and I think she deserved some recognition for her acting in Midsommar, which didn't get any nominations here. Makeup and hairstyling. The nominees are Bombshell, Joker, Judy, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and 1917. This is also a category that's a little hard for me, because this particular technical aspect usually doesn't stand out to me when I'm watching a film. But for my personal pick, I've got to go with 1917. I think this one's probably an underdog in the category, but I think it was great. Sometimes the styling that goes unnoticed because it's so realistic is better than the flashy stuff. I don't think the Academy will agree with me though, and I think Joker will actually take home the Oscar, which is okay with me too. Documentary feature. The nominees are American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, For Sama, and Honeyland. There was actually a decent amount of content diversity in this year's documentaries, and there was only one that I really didn't care for, Honeyland. But there was also one that I really liked, and so my personal pick goes to For Sama. It was such a personal and emotionally striking film, and was the clear standout for me. As far as what will win, I think you could argue for any of them. American Factory and The Edge of Democracy have the socio-political advantage. For Sama and The Cave are both about an emotional current event, and Honeyland has its uniqueness going for it. It's a really tough choice, but I think the Academy's gonna agree with me and go with For Sama because of its storytelling style. Costume design. The nominees are The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I gotta say, I'm a little surprised by the nominees here. None of them are bad, but there are several here I would have swapped out for unnominated movies. But of these options, I've gotta go with Jojo Rabbit. Not only was it a period piece which required time-accurate clothing, but it's a quirky, satirical period piece, so everything had this attention to detail and brightness to it. But I think Little Women is actually gonna win this one. They don't call them costume dramas for nothing. Film editing. The nominees are Ford v Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, and Parasite. So unlike the last few technical categories, editing is something I do typically pick up on while watching a movie, but that doesn't make this any easier to pick. This is a stacked nominee set. I think I've got to go with the one that stood out to me the most on my initial watch, and that's Ford v Ferrari. The whole film was nicely edited, but those racing sequences were something else. I do think Ford v Ferrari has a really good shot at actually being chosen, but I think Joker's gonna edge it out. Tough call though, because I think they're all in the running. Production design. The nominees are The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Oh man, we've got another stacked nominee pool here. This one's especially difficult because I think there are 4 nominees here deserving of the Oscar. But I'm gonna go with my initial gut feeling on this one too and pick Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't think it has much of a shot to actually win, but this movie just oozed 60s thanks to the production design and the music. But I think Parasite is actually gonna win, and deservedly so. Its set was just as meticulously crafted as its script was. Cinematography. The nominees are The Irishman, Joker, The Lighthouse, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is a category that has some glaring omissions and a few questionable inclusions, but I do think 3 of the 5 are certainly worthy. My personal pick is definitely 1917. The camera work in this was just phenomenal, and I haven't seen a more visually satisfying film in quite a while. As far as the actual winner, I really think it's a 3-way dead heat between 1917, Joker, and The Lighthouse. 1917 has a great shot, but since Roger Deakins just won 2 years ago, I think that might decrease his odds here. Joker's cinematography was noticeably impressive too, but despite the number of nominations the film received, I think it's going to be met with anti-comic book bias and underperform as a result. So I think The Lighthouse is actually going to win. It might be a bit of a dark horse, but the Academy did go with the black and white option last year. Sound editing. The nominees are Ford v Ferrari, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. The 2 sound categories can be a bit tough to differentiate sometimes, but this first one focuses on the sound effects themselves. And because of that, I think the clear standout here is Ford v Ferrari. Everything from the revving engines, to the tinkering of tools, to the sound of gears shifting, it really does a great job of capturing the atmosphere. And even though this category's got some competition, I think the Academy's gonna agree with me on this one and go with Ford v Ferrari. Sound mixing. The nominees are Ad Astra, Ford v Ferrari, Joker, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So while our last sound category focused on the collection of sound effects, this one deals with the blending, mixing sound effects, dialogue, and music to create the sonic experience of a film. This one's an easy pick for me. 1917, no doubt. It blends these sound elements together in a way that perfectly balances the cinematic elements of the film and the realism of the experience. And not only do I favor this pick, but I also think 1917 is actually going to come up with the win here. International feature film. The nominees are Corpus Christi, Honeyland, Les Miserables, Pain and Glory, and Parasite. So remember how I said I had seen 52 of the 53 nominees this year? Well, that one missing film belongs to this category, Corpus Christi. Luckily, I can still feel confident in my pick here because my number 1 favorite movie of 2019 is in this category and easily takes my personal pick, Parasite. I think the voting members will have a soft spot for Pain and Glory with its director, main character, and film-centric story, but I still think Parasite is gonna get an easy win here. Actor in a supporting role. The nominees are Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes, Al Pacino in The Irishman, Joe Pesci in The Irishman, and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I think the supporting actor category is much stronger than the supporting actress this year, but that doesn't make it any easier to pick. I'm really struggling to choose between Tom Hanks and Brad Pitt. They were both great in very different ways, but I think I've got to go with Brad Pitt, if only because he was on screen for a larger chunk of his movie. I don't think the Academy is going to go with either of those picks, though. The win's definitely going to The Irishman, and while I think it's really close, I do think Joe Pesci's going to take it. His performance was great, but the fact that he came out of retirement for this one is going to push him over the edge. Animated feature film. The nominees are How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Claws, Missing Link, and Toy Story 4. I thought all of this year's nominees were pretty decent, but this is one of those no-brainer categories for me. Toy Story 4 easily. The Toy Story franchise is so important to me, and this was an excellent addition. And I know that a lot of people hate that Pixar seems to swoop in and win this almost every year, but they're gonna do it again. Toy Story 4 is taking that Oscar home. Live action short film. The nominees are Brotherhood, Nefta Football Club, The Neighbors' Window, Saria, and A Sister. So this is one of those categories that a lot of people just wing during their predictions, but I actually saw all 15 shorts, so I have a pretty good sense of them. You can check out my rankography of all 5 nominees here. For my personal pick, this category is a really close call between The Neighbors' Window and A Sister. One's a comedy drama, while the other's a tense thriller, but I think I've got to go with The Neighbors' Window for the emotional spectrum and impact it provides. In terms of the short that will win, I think The Neighbors' Window has a really good shot, but the true story tragedy of Saria will likely put it just ahead. Animated short film. The nominees are Daughter, Hair Love, Kit Bull, Memorable, and Sister. Of all the shorts categories, this tends to be the most popular, but it's still underseen compared to some of the other Oscar categories. You can check out my rankography of all 5 nominees here. This is another close two-way tie for me, this time between Hair Love and Kit Bull. I think both have really strong emotional stories, but animals win out for me every time, so Kit Bull gets my personal pick. I think the actual winner's gonna come down to these same 2 nominees, and while I do think Kit Bull's got a really good chance, I think Hair Love's gonna come out on top by a hair. Documentary short subject. The nominees are In the Absence, Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone if you're a girl, Life Overtakes Me, St. Louis Superman, and Walk Run Cha-Cha. Okay, so we've got the last of the shorts categories and arguably the most underseen category of the entire ceremony. As with the other 2 shorts categories, you can check out my rankography of all 5 nominees here. Just like with the live action and animated shorts, I can easily narrow this down to my top 2, and then not so easily pick a favorite. I really enjoyed both In the Absence and Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone if you're a girl, but I think I've got to go with the more uplifting of the 2 and choose Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone if you're a girl as my personal pick. The actual winner is even tougher to choose, because I think it could just as easily go to St. Louis Superman as it could to my aforementioned top 2. The calls for diversity in the Academy might push St. Louis Superman to the front, the compelling nature of In the Absence could put it at number 1, but I think positivity is gonna win out this year with Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone if you're a girl. Visual effects. The nominees are Avengers Endgame, The Irishman, The Lion King, 1917, and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. This is always a tough category for me because I usually don't agree with the nominees that get selected. This year's pool isn't actually too bad, but I know that almost nobody is going to agree with my personal pick here. Yeah, you know what's coming. The Lion King. I liked this way more than the average moviegoer, and although I think it would have been better suited for the animation category, it still stands out here. Unfortunately, I highly doubt that this has much of a chance of actually winning, and I think that honor will come down to either The Irishman or Avengers Endgame. I think the voting body will be more impressed by the de-aging effects of The Irishman than the general audience was, but I think Endgame will come out on top. Despite the anti-comic book bias, I think it'll get the edge mostly due to its title as the highest grossing film of all time. Original Screenplay. The nominees are Knives Out, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. I always have a tough time with this category because I find it really difficult to compare the stories of films from different genres. That being said, the standout screenplay of the year for me was definitely Parasite. It's so meticulously crafted and just satisfyingly put together. As far as the actual winner's concerned, I think a few nominees have a really good shot, namely Marriage Story and Knives Out. But in the end, I think Parasite really will come out on top. Adapted Screenplay. The nominees are The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, and The Two Popes. If original screenplay was tough for me, adapted screenplay is always harder because there are so many variables at play with this category. The original source material has a big impact, obviously, but everybody looks for something different. Close adaptations, unique or risky adaptations, expanded plots, tightly condensed stories, it's always just so up in the air as a category. For me, I've got to go with Joker, even though it's only loosely adapted and not really based on any one specific story. In terms of the actual winner, I think it's going to come down to The Irishman and Little Women. I think The Irishman is technically up the alley of more voting members, but I think Little Women has the slight edge here given its immense praise in spite of being adapted from such a prominent and well-known novel. Original score. The nominees are Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. We're finally to the music categories, and I gotta say, of all 24 categories, I think this one has the most egregious omission, and the score for Us definitely belongs on this list. But I guess there's a silver lining, because it makes my personal pick here easy. 1917. Us and 1917 are my favorite and second favorite of the year, and honestly past couple years, so this was a no-brainer for me. And while I think Joker has a decent shot at a win here, I think after 14 unsuccessful nominations, Thomas Newman's finally gonna get his first Oscar for 1917. Original song. The nominees are Randy Newman's I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away from Toy Story 4, Elton John and Taron Egerton's I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocket Man, Chrissy Metz's I'm Standing With You from Breakthrough, Idina Menzel's Into the Unknown from Frozen 2, and Cynthia Erivo's Stand Up from Harriet. I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed in the song nominees this year. Not only did they force me to watch Breakthrough, but most are generically underwhelming. I've always liked Randy Newman's Toy Story work, but I think 4 was the weakest for him. And as decent as Into the Unknown is, I think Lost in the Woods would have been a far superior choice. So after re-listening to all these nominees a few times, I finally settled on a kinda surprising choice for me. Cynthia Erivo's Stand Up from Harriet. From a standalone song perspective, it's easily the best. I think the Academy's gonna go with something a little bit more established though. Newman's won in the past for Toy Story, and the first Frozen won for Let It Go, so I wouldn't be surprised if either of them got it, but I think it's gonna go to Elton John and Taron Egerton's I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocket Man, and I think this for a couple reasons. First, it's the only nominee whose story literally focuses on singing, much like last year's winner. Second, Elton John is a very established and beloved artist, so people go nuts for him. And third, not only does Taron Egerton have some pipes, but his surprising omission from the Best Actor category will likely give him a bit of a pity advantage here. Actor in a leading role. The nominees are Antonio Banderas in Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver in Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, and Jonathan Pryce in The Two Popes. With one exception, I thought this was kind of an underwhelming set of nominees this year. Not that anybody did poorly, but I just didn't get Best Actor vibes from most of these performances. I did mention one exception though, and that exception easily gets my pick, Joaquin Phoenix. And while I think both Leonardo DiCaprio and Adam Driver have a shot at this, I'm pretty confident that Joaquin Phoenix is gonna take home the Oscar. Actress in a leading role. The nominees are Cynthia Erivo in Harriet, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan in Little Women, Charlize Theron in Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger in Judy. Following suit with Best Actor, I found this set of nominees to be a bit underwhelming too, and the omission of the horror performances by Lupita Nyong'o and Florence Pugh were disappointing to say the least. Again, nobody nominated was bad, but only one performance screamed Best Actress to me. So I've gotta go with that gut reaction and choose Renee Zellweger. She really disappeared into that role and gave an excellent performance. When it comes to who will actually win, I think it's down to Scarlett Johansson and Renee Zellweger. I actually think Johansson is probably the favorite heading into Sunday thanks to the raw emotionality of her performance, but I think Zellweger's gonna eke out the win. Super hard to tell though, probably almost 50-50 here. Directing. The nominees are The Irishman, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Now this is quite the set of nominees. Honestly, I think all 5 could be deserving, and I don't really think there's a wrong answer here. For me personally, it comes down to Parasite and 1917, and it's pretty much a dead heat. I know there's a ton of support from the so-called Bong Hive, but I think I've got to go in 1917. The technical elements and immense amount of planning that went into it are phenomenal, and there's no way it would have worked had it not been for Sam Mendes' careful oversight. I think the actual winner could go any of the 5 ways though. Tarantino will definitely get some love, but I think it'll also come down to Parasite in 1917, with the slight edge going to 1917. Best Picture. The nominees are Ford v Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Here we are, the big one that everybody's been waiting for. For me, this is a challenging category, and it once again comes down to 1917 and Parasite. And man, is this a tough choice. I've been agonizing over it for like a month now. You'd think it'd be easy, because I put Parasite as my #1 movie of 2019, but oddly enough, that isn't giving it an instant win for me. This is honestly a complete toss-up, but I think I've got to go with 1917. The Academy's going to be in the same boat as me and have it narrowed down to 1917 or Parasite. I should probably split the difference and say Parasite's going to take it, but I think 1917 is actually going to come out on top. The technical achievements will push it into the lead, and unfortunately, I think there will be some voting members who will view Parasite's likely win in the International Feature Film category as good enough. This is going to be a really close call though. Alright, so there you have it. My picks and predictions for the 92nd Academy Awards. These were just my thoughts on the likely outcome of this year's Oscars, but I'd love to hear what your predictions are too, so be sure to post them in the comments below. I've already reviewed some of these movies, so I put links to those videos in the description below, and you can check those out if you want some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. And if you're interested in buying any of these Oscar-nominated movies, I do have affiliate links to all of them in the description below. I do get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Also, be sure to check back after the Oscars to see how I did with my predictions in my final Oscar video of the year. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.